Heard that before.
Guess I got to start swinging some bigger deals over here, huh?
Yeah, you do.
Then we're going to just lean on the fact that we can operate more efficiently than almost every buyer. And so we'll use that to our competitive advantage when we're making offers.
I do a lot of the systems between Mike and I, and a lot of those systems go to finding leads, right? Like we do everything from texting to postcards to cold calling to all that kind of stuff. I know for sure that doing postcards is fantastic, or doing cold calls is really great. It's really great for the 1-4s. Maybe you're going to get a 10 unit, maybe you'll get a 20 unit owner to play ball with you. My opinion, you're not getting a 100 plus unit owner to have a conversation with you and potentially sell. Can it happen? 100% sure. But it has not really happened to us. So my question to you is, where are you finding these deals? MLS? Are you doing some marketing of your own? Like, where are these deals coming from?
Yeah, I would say your sentiment towards larger properties is what we found as well. So the MLS story kind of ended when we ended the small multifamily pursuit. Deal flow, or I should say quality deal flow, is certainly the bottleneck within our organization. So we have the operational capacity, we have the equity, we have the debt. It's quality deal flow that is the bottleneck. And so to answer your question, we're trying anyway in every way we can. I don't think I know that it's not a good use of time for me to send out postcards because of the buy box that I'm pursuing. And so really how I have said we're going to generate deal flow or quality deal flow is we're going to find the top 5 to 7 brokers that do multifamily real estate in Cincinnati, and we're going to build great relationships with them. Then we're going to just lean on the fact that we can operate more efficiently than almost every buyer. And so we'll use that to our competitive advantage when we're making offers. And so the majority of our leads come through real estate brokers. And they have, teams of people that have been working relationships for 25, 30 years with the families and individuals that own these assets. I don't want to compete with them, right? Like I'd have to build a whole nother organization to compete with them. I would rather just happily pay their commission or have it paid by the seller and adjust my net offer because of that, because they're better at it than me and they always will be. And so I just figure out who that is, build strong relationships with them, help them understand why we would be a great buyer, and then let them go to work.
Yep.
I've heard that before.
Guess I got to start swinging some bigger deals over here, huh?
Yeah, you do.
No, it's 100% true. I mean, you can see who's doing what on CoStar, LoopNet, Crexy now. MLS ends, at least in our search criteria, it's 5+ units, but CoStar is where all the bigger deals are going to live, and that's where the brokers are putting them. So 100%.
Yeah. I mean, most of I would say 25% of the deals we buy are actually marketed by the brokers, but the majority of them are they know we're actively acquiring. Right. They know we're a reputable buyer that will stand by our offers, do what we say we're going to do, and have the resources to, raise the capital or find the debt, even in challenging conditions. And so a lot of times they'll just send something our way and say, hey, this guy's considering a sale. Can you float a number by him and see if we can make it work? And sometimes it sticks. Yep. But I actually intentionally, as a buyer, I will say, I'm interested in this specific property. I know who owns it, but rather than just go to the owner, I'm going to go through this real estate broker and allow them to get a commission, because it's going to come back to me on the back end on the next one when they do a better job of uncovering the deal than me. And so
you are 100% right in saying that. Could not be more true. I have a couple clients that will in the commercial space. A lot of people do not sign with a broker because they want deals to be sent with them. And I don't make anyone sign, but I have a couple clients who will use me when they don't have to use me, to your point. And I will never forget that. And I will ultimately send them the deals first. To your point. I mean, it's not costing you anything. So why wouldn't you, You're 100% right.
And a lot of times, I'm aligning myself with the top 5 brokers in the city, and I've done many transactions with them. And so a lot of times the seller might not know me, but they certainly know this number one broker, right? And so when that number one broker says, "Look, I know Jered. He's a good, he's a good buyer. You can trust this offer." That's worth sometimes these commissions are crazy high, like on a $20 million deal, right? You're talking some like $500,000.
Yep.
But the alternative is maybe they never even considered the offer, but because I have the reputation of this quality broker standing behind me saying, "You should trust this guy. He's serious." Like sometimes that's worth $500,000.
Yeah.
Even if that's all they did. Right.
Yeah.
Because there's times when brokers will make the introduction and it feels like they step out of the way. And I just remind myself like, well, I might not have even got the introduction. In the space we're dealing in, that's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
Right. Direct to owner, it happens, but it's not as frequent. These are professionals that want to be represented.
Yep. 100%.
So in any of your typical syndication deals, like I always hear like, it's kind of like a 5-year window. Like, in 5 years, we're really looking to sell this thing and pay everybody off, or in 5 years looking to refi and maybe pay, back a percentage of, what the investors have put in originally. What is sort of your timeline on these deals? Is it similar to that, or?
No, it's actually, we're usually on the longer end of the spectrum. So I believe that the best way to build wealth in real estate is to own it, not to sell it. However, in the syndication model, you usually do need to put a timeline on it. So, some of my investors are 70s and 80s, in their 70s and 80s, right? So to say we're going to own this indefinitely doesn't always align with their own investment timeline. And so what we've done on every single deal we've raised for, we said 10 years, right? So we're going to hold this for 10 years. What we have found in practice, though, is that we've been able to, usually within the first 2 to 3 years, force enough appreciation, restructure the debt, return 100% of the investor capital back to them. And so then when we get closer to that 10-year mark and we ask the investors who are involved, let's say there's 30 investors involved, and we say, "Do you guys want to target the 10-year sale, or you already have all your money back? Do you want to just keep the cash flow going?" Everybody's just like, keep the party going, right? Like, I don't have anywhere else to put it that's going to earn me more. So go ahead and put another loan on this thing and keep the party rolling. If we did have like a 1 or 2 investors out of those 30 that say, "Actually, I need to exit for whatever reason," the way our operating agreement is structured is S&S Capital Group, my company, has first right of refusal. And so at that time, I just buy out the investor at a fair market value and increase my own shares. And so that's what we've been seeing. But typically when we go in, we're saying 10 years. So a couple years in, restructure the debt, sell at year 10. We haven't been selling them because we just like to own them. And we like the consistent, predictable cash flow that gets kicked off when you own rather than when you sell.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So why not, just playing devil's advocate, let's just say you do a refinance and at that point, all of your investors are paid back. Why not structure it where at that point where they're all repaid, like they're paid off and you retain the asset? Is that something that you've considered or ever done?
It's not something we've ever done. I've heard of other syndication structures that do that. And the question that I would ask is like, why would you do that as a passive investor, right? Like you were along on the ride for the riskiest part, and then you got kicked to the curb as soon as like the risk was mitigated. So I want to be that competitive alternative to the individuals who are syndicating and saying, you're out once the money's returned. And I think our track record of our ability to raise money says that investors do have the sophistication to acknowledge that.
Right. Go ahead.
I think this might be a little selfish of me, but well, for us, I know we've discussed it at length, and I think I know what your answer is going to be. But for someone who's like us, who owns 100% of all of the deals or all of the properties that we own, versus you, who I assume owns a percentage, might be bigger, might be small, depending on the deal and how much money you put in, but. Why, let's just say, someone is debating between the syndication model or just buying it the old fashioned way. Why go syndication? Why raise capital? Why own only a part of a deal when you could own 100%? for sure a smaller deal. We're not going to be buying 100+ unit deal on our own without syndicating it, but why not buy a 20 unit deal, retain 100% ownership versus do a 100 unit deal and retain, say, 20 or 30%?
Yeah. Well, I think there's several things I want to say there. And first, like, syndication is a whole nother arm of your business. So it's not for everyone, right? Like, it's not just like, oh, I know so-and-so who has deep pockets and I should just do this, right? There's a responsibility to raising money from other people, from all the way from just like ethics and morals, but also like SEC requirements, right? Making sure you're structured correctly, making sure you're reporting correctly, all these things. So that's something like a word of caution. So if you are committing to that model, you're committing to a lot of responsibility. And so I think that's first and foremost. Going back to my story, if you asked me in the first 8 years, do you want to raise money from investors and do the syndication model? My answer would have been no. I don't want that responsibility. I started very young. There's no reason for me to do that. I'll just snowball it on my own. And it wasn't until like around that year 8, what happened was I have great parents, right? So me and my brother have great parents. My dad, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked a corporate job for 30 years. And did everything right financially, disciplined in their savings, invested into their 401k, but ultimately didn't get them maybe to the exact point that they had wanted for retirement at the age they wanted. And it was around like year 8 in our journey that we found this 16-unit apartment community that had some great numbers. And we said, rather than us buy it, why don't you guys contribute some money? We'll take 30%, you take 70%. We know it's a good deal. Here's the numbers. So they did that. And ultimately what my parents' 401k did in 30 years, we doubled in 18 months. And it allowed them to retire. And so like my mindset shifted of, I don't want that responsibility to, man, I have a skill set here that really can like add value to others. And I think of it as like, do you guys know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Mm-hmm. Like you start out, it's like, I got to pay the bills, right? Like I got to get a roof overhead. I got to get my food done. Then it was like, oh, I got to take care of my family. And ultimately I was making pretty good cash flow. And it's kind of like, I'm in my mid 20s and it's kind of like, what's next, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of ends with like, how do you contribute to others and how do you have self-fulfillment? And it was like, man, this is an avenue that I can do this, right? And so now we have hundreds of investors that I can deploy a skill set that we're really good at through and borrow the capital that they're willing to contribute. And then they can do great things with it. And so it's a little bit of a mindset shift that I had around year 8 of rather than like, I don't want that responsibility, is like, I have a skill set. I have the responsibility to use it well. And frankly, there's the other more obvious part where it's the economies of scale, right? Like I get to benefit from 50 employees. That was less of the reason initially, but I've certainly benefited from the things that you probably were expecting me to say, right? Like, well, we can scale faster and we can get the 50 employees and we can benefit from all of that. That's certainly true. But I think there was a little bit of a different answer that tipped me to want to do it.
Yeah, it's really good. I like the self-fulfillment. It's really good. Obviously, you had all your ducks in a row before that, and like you said, you were cash flow positive, and you had the ability and opportunity to kind of take that mindset shift. So,
yeah,
man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think we're both super impressed. Is there, not to put you in the hot seat, but is there one particular thing that stands out in your mind for someone that's listening, whether it's like, align yourself with a couple good partners, live below your means, like you were saying, like, is there something that sticks out in your mind for someone that maybe has a couple of units and that aspires to have more than 1,000 or more than 100, really? Is there something that sticks out that really was a pivotal moment for you?
I wouldn't say it's pivotal moment, but I would say it's universally applicable. So let me say this, that, and this won't align with your guys' current third-party management, but like what I have found to be universal and let me take another step back. What gets talked a lot about on podcasts is like the investment returns, right? Like this is how much money you can make in real estate. But what I've learned is investment returns in real estate are supported by on-site operations. And then one step further that a lot of people miss is on-site operations are supported by the people who work there. right? And so that's not just to say in multifamily, it could be like office or industrial or single family or whatever it is. It's like, if you want to generate strong cash flow, if you want your property to be worth more, there are people on the ground that are actually doing that work. It is the maintenance guys, it's the leasing agents, it's the property managers. And so highly skilled, well-paid people are the people that produce the financial returns. So I think over 15 years of having the wind at our back, too many people have focused on market conditions, which market and what's the economic fundamentals that will just, force this will just give me this appreciation. And mine is, think about how you can force appreciation. And so much of that comes back to like the operations that are happening at your asset. Even single family, how quickly does it get leased? Is it marketed well? Are they responsive on the phone? Do the pictures look good? And all the screening practices that go into not having turnover, right? That is a massive expense line item. All of that is what generates the financial return. So I would just encourage your listeners to say, how do I align myself with quality operations, and who are the people that can help me get there?
Wow. Yeah. No, I love that, because I think it also speaks to this other fact that I've certainly made a mistake. I can't even count how many times. It's like to kind of like boil it down to maybe someone who only has a couple of units. When you're leasing out units, how many times have you leased out a unit to someone that you shouldn't have because you just wanted to lease it real quick? It's just like really, really making sure the criteria that for the people that you're hiring or for the people that you're renting to is rock solid. It's worth I think you'd agree. It's worth holding out for like the perfect hire or for the perfect, pretty perfect tenant.
And when you have good talent, retain them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I would even say you don't have to, once you get very good at it, you don't have to hold out. So you're not sacrificing, like you'll find them quickly, right? The skilled person isn't waiting. They're getting them into the door right away. And so we're very big on KPIs, metrics, the data and analytics that then can help us direct the company. And so, over like 1,300 units, just under 1,300 units, as of the end of the month, which we're recording, what is it? It's May 1st. As of April 30th, yesterday, 1,300 units, we were 99% occupied. So that means there was 13 units that didn't have a resident in them. Of those 13, I know that 9 had signed leases on them. Like our metrics are hard to compete with at our scale, like that we can hit those numbers. And it's because like we have the systems and processes and the people in place. Like our leasing team is pre-leasing almost everything for quality residents. And then the other number that I'm really proud of is like a metric is our average length of stay in C to B class multifamily is 5 years. So we average an 80% retention rate. It's like triple what our market standard is.
It's amazing.
And so we're good at reducing turnover. And then when we have it, we're extremely good at keeping the time frame very low. And the trickle down effect that has in your income statement and ultimately your net operating income and therefore the values of your property is significant.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to those operations.
Completely agree with you. That's extremely impressive.
Well, Jered, this is amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to come speak to all of our listeners and ourselves here. I mean, I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners did as well. Very impressive with what you've done. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, our company name is S&S Capital Group. So that's 3 letters at the beginning, like Sam, Nancy, Sam Capital Group. And our website's just snscapitalgroup.com. And we have a contact us link that those emails will go to me.
Awesome.
So I'd be happy to chat with anyone who wants to get in touch with me.
Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes as well. So thank you again for your time and congrats to all your success. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you. If you guys make the leap and go into self-managing, let me know. I'm happy to help out.
Yeah,
we'll do.
Appreciate it. All right, have a good one. Thank you so much for listening to Sky's the Limit podcast. We're always releasing new content, so if there's something you want to hear, be sure to comment below. And don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And just remember, sky's the limit, dive deep, and invest in how you want to live.